This is a segment of the up-and-coming The Whole Chessboard video. I hope you enjoy. The Benevolent Cult is a rundown of reality label. They are part of the White Square Freemason ancient bloodlines, and they are using abundance like spoiling a child to bring in the tribulation instead of scarcity and fear like the current regime. The Benevolent Cult will usher in technology that will look so advanced that when you are told about it, you will believe that is alien tech when they tell you it is alien tech. The illusion they create will make our new life experience appear like a utopia because we have never had this experience in our modern times. But this is another trick played on man. Man is not used to kindness or the thin veneer of kindness that the Benevolent Cult will usher in. Over the last 100 years, we have been under the dominance of the Canaanite bloodline or the tribes from the land of Canaan. You can see this through their idol worship. It was the Canaanites' turn of the bloodline families to try to bring on the tribulation. We saw World War I, which decimated government and public wealth through the massive debt of war, then the destruction of currency and the implementation of centralized banks, massive taxation under the guise of benefits, fiat currency and statute law that is backed through the fiat currency and the public's labor. Then we had the continuation of World War I, known as World War II, which led to the creation of the Khazarian Jew stronghold, Tel Aviv, the recreation of Israel, and the one world government center called the United Nations, and the Ashkenazi state of Ukraine, which set up the world launderer of securities. Many now see the Canaanite deception because their plan has been leaked all over the internet, in books, television, and the ones who don't listen will listen when the Benevolent Cult takes over, introduces the disclosure event, and the great deception begins. I don't yet know what family is taking control at this time. Signs point to the Grail bloodline, who will convince many they are the line of Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. But I do know that the same patterns are being used for the transition. The Freemason tactic, order out of chaos, is being implemented worldwide, much like World War I. When the transition comes, man will be commissioned to build the false utopia that will end up being our prison. We are going to be looking into some of these tools the Benevolent Cult will introduce. But before I do, I want to introduce you to the future. Have you heard about a movie called The Matrix? It's a Freemasonic science fiction film about our future, about transhumanism, AI control, magic, dimensional travel, and a rising Antichrist the world will hate at first, but then love. There is a scene in the movie where Agent Smith tells Morpheus that the first Matrix was a world where everyone would be happy, and said Matrix was a complete disaster. People committed suicide. Entire crops where human beings were used as batteries for the machines were lost. Agent Smith realized that humans define reality through struggle, or, biblically speaking, the curse from the Garden of Eden, where man must toil in the ground until they are redeemed. Only God can bring in a utopia, and in Freemasonry, God is the enemy because God put us in a giant prison like the Matrix. Where did the Matrix get that idea for the utopia failure? I'd like to tell you about ethologist John B. Calhoun, who began experimenting with rodents in 1949, studying an enclosed group of Norway rats at a barn in Rockville, Maryland. He gave the rats food and water, expecting their population to swell. Instead, their population reached 200 after subdividing into smaller groups, no bigger than a dozen rats or so. Calhoun continued his experiments in the 1950s, using more complex enclosures to examine mice behavior in predator-free environments. In each case, the following events would take place. The mice would breed in large quantities. Eventually, their population would cap out. The mice would be either hostile or form exclusive groups, or they'd be passive and antisocial. Their population would trail off and become extinct. In Universe 25, Calhoun carried out his ultimate research experiment with mice. 4 pairs of healthy mice would grow within a 2.7 square meters with 4 pens, 256 living compartments, and 16 burrows, all of which led to food and water supplies, with no plagues, no predators, and an unlimited food supply and housing. The rodents would be as comfortable as they could possibly be. During the first 104 days, the mice adjusted to their new surroundings, marked their territory, and began nesting. Their population doubled every 55 days. By the 315th day, Universe 25 contained 620 mice. Despite the abundance of space, most mice were crowding selected areas and eating from the same food sources. They saw eating as a communal activity, which explained why they favored certain food sources and disfavored others. This crowding led to a drop in mating, and the birth rate fell to a third of its former levels. Then the social imbalance also took place among the mice. 1/3 emerged socially dominant, while the other 2/3 were less socially adept than their forebears. This lack of bonding skills created a slow but irreversible population decline. Behavior disparities between males of high and low status became more pronounced. Those at the bottom of the order found themselves rejected by females and withdrew from mating altogether, having no roles to fulfill. These outcast males ate and slept alone. Sometimes they fought among one another. The alpha males, on the other hand, became more aggressive, often engaging in violent acts for no reason. They'd go as far as raping other mice, regardless of gender. The beta males, those ranked between the alphas and omegas, became timid and inert, and often ended up being the passive recipients of violence. In some cases, there were bloodbaths, and they ended in cannibalistic feats for the victors. Meanwhile, the females were left alone to defend their nests. Many of them turned aggressive towards males. Many of them stopped caring for their young. Many of them stopped mating. The consequences were devastating. In some compartments, infant mortality rate went above 90%. By the 560th day, the population increase had ceased altogether, and the mortality rate was almost 100%. Calhoun called this the death phase, the die period. The rodent Utopia was approaching extinction. In the middle of all the violence, hostility, and lacking of mating, a younger generation of mice reached maturity. Having never been exposed to examples of normal, healthy relations, this generation had no concept of mating, parenting, or marking territory. This new generation spent all their waking hours eating, drinking, and grooming themselves. They had no desire to mate, raise young, or establish a role in Universe 25. The end of the mouse utopia could have arisen not from density, but from excessive social interaction. Medical historian Edmund Ramsden said in 2008, not all of Calhoun's rats had gone berserk. Those who managed to control space led relatively normal lives. With the destruction of the family, the war on men and fathers, the artificial inflation of the female ego through feminist pride, the encouragement of sexual deviancy over the last 30 years, and understanding the impact of this utopia experiment, how do you expect our society to fare? If you want a glimpse in just how much scientists understand how to manipulate man, take a look at the Minds of Men documentary by Truthstream Media. Social engineering was perfected in the 1960s, if not before. So, what is the purpose of the first false utopia, which will be set up after the organized crash of all of Earth's societies? The purpose is to create a worldwide idol and false religion, create even more impatient and lazy people through technology that will give them everything they need, but have no purpose, because AI technology will take most of man's jobs away and passions away. The AI will be doing almost anything better than man, except for the worship of God. which will be outlawed first with prison, then later by death penalty. Finally, people will be so bored, lost, narcissistic, and most importantly, devoid of God by choice, that crime will skyrocket, assaults and rape and murder will become the norm worldwide, leaving man to require a solution and a savior. But the first world savior is the false savior.